Hi there, this is Puddin02 and welcome to TCM Tips for Beginners. I've been seeing many of you ever since TCM was made as a free downloadable title for the month of April on PS Plus, so I decided to share some tips for new players navigating the world of TCM. Before we get started, I want to make a few points here. First, this video is for playing as the victim role. If you need tips on how to play family, then this is not the video for you. And second, I recommend that you watch the basic tutorial provided by TCM and play a handful of games. This video will assume you know the basic fundamentals of the game. So without further ado, here are my tips for beginner players in TCM. This first segment has to do with the maps in TCM. However, everything mentioned here will not apply to the graveyard map. All the maps in TCM have a very similar feel in terms of gameplay mechanics, but graveyard differs from the rest in how the exits and objectives are structured. With that being said, let's talk about the 4 exits. Every map in TCM has 4 different exits you can reach. I'm sure you've seen the 2 objective-based exits such as the fuse box and water pump, but as beginners you should be focusing on the other 2 exits, which are the battery and generator. There are 2 reasons why you should focus on these 2 exits. First, they don't require an additional item to unlock. All you need is your unlock tool. Second, these exits are the most straightforward per se. They're usually at the edge of the map, so all you have to do is unlock your way out, meaning unlocking doors until you reach the end. This path is usually the longest, but it's generally the safest path to take as long as you play stealthily. That's another thing I should have mentioned earlier. As beginners, I highly recommend you play slowly and stealthily for a while until you get your bearings. I know many of you will see this as a no-brainer, but you will learn that more experienced players will tend to rush and make noise to escape. That's because they know the layouts on the map, and part of the skills as the victim is knowing when to rush and when to take it slow. As a beginner, you don't have these skills, so it's best to take it slow. My last tip here is that you can actually unlock the gates before turning off the battery/generator. Don't let the electrified floor scare you. This can be a viable strategy because if you unlock the final door before turning off the battery/generator, but a family chases you out, you have still made progress. The family cannot relock a door that has been unlocked, whereas if you turn off the battery or generator and were chased out, the family can turn on the battery/generator, thus undoing the progress you made there. Keep in mind that there's a family member that can place electrified traps that can shock you if you don't disarm her first, so do not confuse that with the electrified floor. More on that later. Okay, great, so now you know what exit to take. So what attributes and perks should you enter the game with? I will leave the perks up to you since you are still learning the basics, but I will give you some quick recommendations here. The following list of perks are the perks I recommend you choose when you decide your path on your skill tree. Extra Drip, No Cell, Choose Flight, Jumpstart, and Bomb Squad. As for the attributes, as a beginner I recommend you invest your points in Toughness and Endurance. The reasoning behind this is very self-explanatory. These attributes will help you get away from family when things get dicey. There's no need to put points into Strength as it's meant to help you when confronting family members for close encounters, which is something you don't want to do as beginners. Do not put points in Stealth. It may seem counterintuitive since I've been recommending you play stealthily, but stealth does not actually make you more quiet per se. It just affects the noise meter when collecting items or certain objectives. This essentially allows you to do things more quickly and quietly, but as beginners, you will be taking things slow, so you will not be making noise as long as you stick to this mindset. Besides, proficiency does the same, and more, which actually leads to my last tip on attributes. Once you get a good feel for the game and the maps, I recommend you start investing points in proficiency. It's the best attribute in the game as it allows you to open doors more quickly, no need to explain why that's important, lets you grab items quicker, and allows you to complete objective-based minigames such as opening a fuse box, turning off battery, and turning on water pump. Yes, as beginners, you may not have to focus on the fuse box and the water pump, but as you get better at this game, it's good to know these facts. So whom should you invest your experience points in? Since most of you got this game for free, I'm sure you aren't invested enough to buy any DLC characters, so we'll be focusing on the first starting 5 characters. The best beginner characters in my opinion are Anna, Leland, and Julie. Anna's ability allows her to tank a great deal of damage, while Julie's ability can allow her to sprint for a long duration consuming less stamina, and Leland allows you to tackle a family player. These characters basically give you a get out of jail free card when used properly, and it allows you to reset once you go down the well. Once you get familiar with the game, then you can move on to Sunny and Connie. Sunny's ability is great, but you need to be familiar with the map's layout to make full use of his hearing. On top of that, he has the lowest base toughness in the game, so if you enter the match with no points invested in him, you could die before you realize you're being attacked. As for Connie, she has the best ability out of the first 5 victims as she can instantly unlock a door. You soon learn in TCM that unlocking a door puts pressure on family players as they must not patrol a certain area or risk having a victim sneak by, which is why you need to learn which doors are important to instantly unlock, because you will only get to instantly unlock one door per match due to the long cooldown of her ability. If you're playing with experienced family players, beware, because they will go after you first. That's how powerful her ability is. This next segment is tips on how to deal with individual family players. First is Leatherface. The most important note to make is that Leatherface has two forms, basically. If he is running with his chainsaw lowered to his hip, he would do moderate damage and has an average run speed, but what we should watch out for is when he raises his chainsaw in the air. While he is doing this, Leatherface is much faster and can never tire out until he swings his chainsaw. And that's the other thing. When he is running and his chainsaw is in the air, he will drop it down on you once he's close by, and that's what we call the overhead, which does devastating damage. It will stun you, and Leatherface will most likely finish you off there with a follow-up hit. Do not let him hit you when he has his chainsaw in the air. Gaps and crawl spaces are your friends when you're being chased, as he cannot go through them. Next is Cook. Cook has two abilities. He can hear a lot of victims, and he can add padlocks to doors. First is the hearing. If the game notifies you that Cook has heard you, then be aware that you are highlighted from his perspective. He also has a perk that also has you highlighted for the other family players, so be prepared if you are traced by him. The highlight usually lasts a couple of seconds though, so it's fine to stop what you're doing so he doesn't anticipate your next move. Use crouch walk when playing games with the Cook, as he cannot hear you while you're crouch walking. As mentioned earlier, Cook can add padlocks to doors whether or not it's locked. So what this means is that he can add a lock to an already locked door, forcing you to break two locks on a single door, slowing down your progress. Two things to note here. Cook cannot add a padlock to the same door in which you have already broken a padlock. However, if there was no padlock initially and had broken the basic lock, Cook can add a padlock to that door. I know that sounds confusing, but the point being is that he can add padlocks to doors that had already been unlocked by a victim, as long as there was never a padlock there to begin with. Second thing to note is that Cook has access to a perk that will make it 50% harder to unlock his padlocks, so don't think the game is bugged if you find yourself stuck in the same lock for a while. It could be his perk or a grandpa perk. More on that later. Next up is Hitchhiker, or Hitch for short. First tip is that Hitch can use gaps and crawl spaces like victims can, so you have to keep moving if you want to lose him. Hitch can place bone traps on the floors, which requires a bone scrap to dismantle. If you get caught in his trap, you can instantly free yourself by using a bone scrap. Hitch can reset his traps, so don't assume a certain path is free just because you already triggered the trap once already. Nothing much else to say here. Hitch is a very tough family player to shake off. Going down the well might be the best option to take if you want to lose him. Johnny is very interesting because I've already heard from a lot of new players calling him broken. And this made me laugh because Johnny is brutal for new victims, as his playstyle leaves little room for victims to make mistakes. Johnny can be brutal, but if you know where the gaps, crawl spaces, and wells are, then Johnny shouldn't be in too much trouble. As I mentioned in my family tier list video, Johnny benefits from being in the right place at the right time. Do not underestimate him. He will outrun you and kill you in a couple of swings if you don't shake him off right away. Gaps and crawl spaces are your friends here. One final tip here is that he cannot track your footprints if you are crouch walking. Even if you ran for a brief moment, he will only be able to track those footprints, but not the footprints caused by crouch walking. So once again, take it slow when playing TCM and you should be fine. Like Hitch, Sissy can use gaps and crawl spaces, so beware when stuck with her in the basement or anywhere else without a well in sight. Sissy is the weakest family member in terms of base damage, so she's not the most intimidating family member to deal with. And her poison doesn't do much damage, it just slows you down slightly unless she uses a special perk which decreases your speed more. Sissy can feed tons of blood to Grandpa, so be careful on taking things too slow with Sissy in the game, because I'm sure many of you are aware a level 5 Grandpa will guarantee to highlight you every time he screams. Nancy is generally considered as the worst family player in the game as she's slow and has below average attack damage. Having said this, she can be tough against new players because Nancy needs time to set up her traps, which she will have plenty of with new players taking their time in the basement. Nancy has two abilities. First is her sense ability. This allows a Nancy player to see what you're saying. There's no way to prevent this, so all you can do is hope that the Nancy player doesn't know your exact location, or you could play it cheesy and point your camera towards the floor so she doesn't see any landmarks on your screen. Be careful with gaps and crawl spaces whenever there's a Nancy in the game, as her wire traps can stun you for a long time and leave you vulnerable as long as you have them on you, but you can use a bone scrap to remove them from the walls. Do not underestimate these traps. They don't do much damage, but they make noise as you run, and you will continue to trip as you use crawl spaces and gaps. Like Hitch's traps, you can remove these wires from yourself with the bone scrap. Otherwise, they're tough to remove, so you may have to go down the well if you're being chased. Next is the strongest family member in my opinion. Hans has 3 abilities, but there are 2 in which you have to worry about. First are his electric traps. Like Nancy and Hitch, you can remove his electric traps with the bone scrap. Hans can place these traps in many places, but you will most likely encounter them on gates and objective-based exits such as generator, battery, water pump, and fuse box. The traps don't do much damage, but the stun is quite long and it notifies Hans when you have triggered it. Hans' second ability, the OP side to him, is his rip stall ability. This allows Hans to basically undo any objective-based exit you just completed. You see, battery, generator, and fuse box have a cooldown before a family member can interact with it, but Hans can do it instantly. His ability has a short cooldown, so you need to coordinate with your fellow victims on activating another objective, whether it be battery, generator, or anything else before his cooldown ends. This is tough for a new player like yourself as you don't know when and how to make callouts. Hans requires coordination to surpass. As such, your best bet is to follow my advice from earlier in the video and take the unlock exits route, and hopefully Hans doesn't notice. Lastly is Bones. I admit that I have the least experience with him as he is the newest family player, but I will pass on the best tips to the best of my knowledge. First, Bones can use gaps and crawl spaces like Hitch and Sissy. Not just that, but Bones has access to a perk that allows him to go down the wells, so the well might not be your saving grace here. Bones has access to gore bombs that explode once you're within close proximity, but I actually learned recently that victims don't trigger them as long as you crouch walk and are not super close to the bomb itself. Which is great because as a beginner you will be taking it slow. The bombs do some damage, but it will have you highlighted for Bones and the family if he has a proper perk selected. Just keep an ear out for the beeping noise and you should be fine. This last segment is all about Grandpa. Though I'm sure many of you know the basics when dealing with Grandpa, there is some nuance to his abilities and I'm going to share a few notes here. First, Grandpa will automatically mark you if you are close to him, even if you crouch walk, so stay away from him or else the entire family team will be notified of your position. Second, it's important to know that Grandpa has perks just like all the other characters in TCM, depending on what family players equip him with. These perks activate depending on what level he is in. I won't go through all the perks, but I will mention the most common used ones. The first and most important Grandpa perk to be aware of is Exterior Alarms. This perk is only active once Grandpa is at level 3, and it highlights any crucial door opened by victims. Basically, any door that needs to be unlocked will be highlighted once a victim opens it. The only way to counter this is to either stab Grandpa so he reverts back to level 3, or play mind games with family players by opening a door but taking a different route. The second common perk is Suffocating Grip. This perk is extremely powerful for a level 1 perk. It increases the family's chances at winning close encounters, which you won't have to worry much as a beginner, but this can essentially take away an option from victims in dealing with family. Third is a No One Escapes Hell perk, which makes it harder to open all locks for victims. This works very similar to Cook's perk on his padlocks, except this Grandpa perk applies to all locks. Connie can counter this with her instant unlock ability, but other than that, there's nothing much you can do other than stabbing Grandpa. Like mentioned earlier, there are other perks such as Animal Farm, which makes it so the chickens are more sensitive to noise, but I wanted to highlight 3 most common and arguably most powerful Grandpa perks. And there you have it. I hope this video was very informative to many of you TCM players out there. If you have any more questions, feel free to drop it down below in the comment section. TCM is a very tough game for beginners, but I strongly recommend that you keep giving this game a chance to grow on you. The learning curve can be steep, but once you overcome it, you'll come to realize that it's the most strategic asymmetrical horror game out there. So have fun, and I'll be seeing you all out there in TCM. Have a good one.